This is long overdue. It is time for 1001 Book Countdown. Let's get to it. Hi everyone, I'm Sandy and welcome to my channel. Today I have a 1001 book countdown video for you. If you're not familiar with the 1001 book countdown, I will definitely leave a card up here for you where you can go watch the original video. But basically, I'm reading books off of the 1001 books you must read before you die list and slowly making my way through this massive project. So if you're new here and you like books and reading and impossible projects, you have found a great channel. I hope you consider subscribing and sticking with me and seeing how far I get through this massive project of mine. I actually combined all 5 versions or editions of the 1001 books you must read before you die list, which gave me 1,300 plus books to read. I am making great progress on that. I've been reading on it for a number of years, and I just decided around the 1001 mark to start documenting my journey out here on YouTube. For me, it's great because I have a horrible memory, and this makes me remember more things. So I'm very pleased with where I'm at. This summer has not been a great reading time for me. I've really slacked off on a lot of things, including the 1001 book countdown. It looks like the last countdown video was actually about 4 months ago, which you would think, I'd have a huge pile of books to talk about today, and unfortunately I have a pile, but not a huge pile, not enough to make up for 4 months. So yeah, we'll kind of dig into all of that and talk about the books I have and kind of the rest of the year, what my plans are. But for today, let's go ahead and put up the numbers, which are 808. That's what I have left out of the 1,315 books on the full list. And the bottom number, which is 32. So every year at the beginning of the year, I pre-select 52 books with the idea of reading 1 per week. And with the idea of hopefully maybe getting that number down to 0 at the end of the year. Last year, I had 1 left. This year, I think it's fairly obvious with having 32 left that I'm not making it this year. I know I'm not going to make it this year. I'm okay with it at this point. There's nothing I can do to change it. So we're just going to roll with it. Like I said, my summer, I got a new job. I've had a lot going on and I just haven't been reading as much. And certainly when I have been reading, I've wanted to read things that are lighter and easier and not so heavy. Sometimes the 1001 books are just really complicated. So yeah, that's where I am at. So let's dig into the books. There are a couple of great books and a couple of one I did not like. So, all right, the first book is actually this one, which is The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark. Muriel Spark actually has 4 books on the 1001 book countdown, and this is my second book. I've read The Driver's Seat. This one features a main character named Miss Jean Brodie. She's a teacher at a school, and she is always saying she's in the prime of her life. These are her best days, and kind of lamenting about that over and over and over again. The book itself I found to be really confusing. I am not one that loves this wide, chaotic timeline. I like very sequential timelines, or if it's not sequential, I like it to be well identified. So I don't want to have to guess where you're at. And this book had instances where you kind of knew something happens between Miss Brodie and her students at the beginning. You kind of have an idea that something happens, but you don't find out anything for the longest time. So for me, I struggled with it because I didn't love that idea of bouncing all over the place. I do like Muriel Sparks, though. I did like The Driver's Seat. I didn't love it. This one fell down a little bit for me. I wanted to love it more. I guess there's a whole bunch of like hidden symbolism in this book, kind of around the time that it was written, and I also struggled with that. So I don't know. For me, it wasn't my favorite. I'm very happy it was short, which meant I was able to get through it. But I read this, I think, back in June or July. That's how long ago it's been since I've done a countdown video. So yeah, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, but it was on the 1001 list. So we get to go from 808 to 807. And it was on my 2024 list. So that number gets to go from 32 down to 31. Great. Still not going to make 0, but progress. And the next book that I have is one of the bigger books that I had on the countdown for this year. It's also a book that I had picked for the Big Book Summer Challenge, so way back in June. And that is The Good Soldier Sveyk. And this book is a monster at over 700 pages. This was originally published in 1921 in Czech and then published in English in 1930. And the good soldier, as we will call him in this because I have trouble saying his actual name, is self-described as kind of just imbecilic, and he does a lot of things to try and get out of being in the army. And sometimes he's sick, sometimes he doesn't want to, sometimes he's just being difficult, sometimes he's giving the appearance of being helpful but is also being difficult. There were some absolutely hilarious moments in this book that made me laugh out loud. There was one that I think it said, I saw it with my own ears, or I heard it with my own eyes, was in this. And I just thought that was really funny. It's like, okay, but his leaders don't really like him. He's always in trouble. He's always trying to get away with things. And he in himself is okay, but he's not as like charming as Ignatius in the Confederacy of Dunces. It's kind of where I was comparing it to as I was reading through it. I like that book far better than this one. The other thing is there's multiple books in this, and the first book I was loving. The first book, reading through it, I was just laughing and thought it was great and had a lot to kind of just think about for the character and how he interacted with people. But then it just kind of went on and on and on and was very repetitive after that first book. It's like, okay, I could have done with the end of the first book and been finished and been fine. I didn't need to read the rest of it. I kept reading the rest of it because I kept hoping that maybe there would be something towards the end that was unexpected and that that would make the book kind of for me. It just never got there. Is it worth reading? I'd say read the first book and then kind of go from there. But no, you are getting into a monster, and I wanted it to be hilarious. I wanted to read and just laugh, and it was a bit of a struggle. It took me almost 3 months to actually finish this book because I was reading it in pieces. Maybe if I read it in a big chunk at a time, I would have had better luck with it, but kind of spreading it out did not do this book any favors for me. But with this book, we do get to go from 807 to 806, and it was on my 2024 list. So we get to go from 31 down to 30 left. Cool. Perfect. The next book was actually my book club pick for July. I think it was for July. And that is The Flamethrowers by Rachel Kushner. Rachel Kushner only has one book on the 1001 Books You Must Read Before You Die list. And this one was originally published in 2013. So it's a much newer book, one of the newer books on the list. And I hated it. I think I gave it 1 star. I did not like this book at all. It's set in the 1970s, and the reason why, which will come as no surprise to those who follow me for any length of time, the reason why I didn't like it is that it is, again, chaotic, and we keep bouncing between like a relative of one of the main characters to current, back and forth, back and forth. It's like, at what point are you going to bring these people together? I love the cover of this one. I really wanted to love it. And no, I just didn't. And I read it now back a bit. So now I'm kind of like, what was this even about? It's already escaping me. So I'm not going to talk anymore about it. Just know it was a disappointment. Even though it was one of my 1001 book club picks as well, just did not like it. So, but this book, we go from 806 to 805, and it was on the 2024 list. So we go from 30 down to 29. Awesome. Great. We're in the 20s. Fantastic. Okay. I do have one more book. I know I'm going fast because I have 4 books to talk about. The last book is by far my favorite book, and it was The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot. I actually ended up reading this with Kristen over at Enter the Book. I also read it as part of the Up to No Good Book Club, which has Shelley Swearingen, Fraser Simon from Springboard Thought, and also has our friends Deb, Sonia, and Angela in it. And so it's a lot of fun to read different books with that particular group. This one, George Eliot actually has 5 books on the 1001 Book Countdown, and I have now read all of them. I've read Silas Marner, Daniel Deronda, Middlemarch, Adam Bede, and now Mill on the Floss. And do have to say it's not my top George Eliot, but it's close to that. Mill on the Floss actually has a few different main characters. You have them as their children and as they kind of grow up over a period of time, probably about 10 or 15 years. And there is so much drama in this book that it is absolutely hilarious. Chapter 6 in particular is just drama, drama, drama. I love him. He loves me. I want to go over here. I want to be with her. You ruined that for me. Come over here. Do this. Come away with me. Oh, it's just over the top dramatic, and it is absolutely fantastic. But up until then, it's a lot about their family and their brother-sister relationship and them growing up and cousins and what happens with their father and the mill and lots of turmoil in their life. And the mom, who's just kind of interesting character in her own right, but really it's centered around the two kids. And so the one thing I will say about George Eliot's writing is that she always seems to have some big surprise at the end or in the middle of a book. And this was no exception to that. I was going into the book thinking it was going to go one way. It did not go that way. I was so surprised. The ending of this book is probably the most surprising out of all of the George Eliot books that I have read. And she did such a good job. I did not see the ending coming. I was so pleasantly surprised that it didn't end in kind of one way. It ended in a completely different way. And it was charming. It really, I mean, the ending wasn't necessarily charming, but the book was charming. And I liked the characters. I liked the character development. I really liked reading this with Kristen, even though it took us a long time to read it. It was a lot of fun going through this book and then having a book club discussion about it as well. I would recommend this one. Middlemarch is still higher on my George Eliot favorite list, but this one was a good one, a good pick. I would definitely recommend this one. If you like this time period, it's absolutely fantastic and it probably will surprise you. So that's my recommendation about The Mill on the Floss. But with this book, we do get to go from 805 to 804, and we go from 29 down to 28. So I'm at 28. I mean, I know I'm at 28. Where should I be? I should be at 6 or less at this point. So obviously I'm not going to read 28 books between now and the end of the month or end of December. It's just not going to happen. So it's kind of thrown my plans for 2025 into a bit of uncertainty. Do I pick up the 20 something books that I didn't read? Do I get 52 different books to read for next year? I honestly do not know what I'm going to do. I also have been talking with Britta Bowler a little bit, who's been the co-host of the book club this year, about next year's book club. And we're kind of landing on doing maybe 6 books rather than 10. And doing every other month. We both had a very chaotic and busy 2024 and think maybe that will be a bit more sustainable. Please let me know in the comments what you think about that. We'll try and revive it a little bit. Maybe Britta and I can do a couple of videos together or something like that to kind of revive some stuff. We haven't determined a list of books yet. We don't know what we're doing, but we did kind of talk about 6. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens in the next week or so, week or two. I will select the books for 2025 coming up and decide what I really want to do with my list for next year. As far as what I'm currently working on, I'm not reading one right now. What am I reading? I'm reading the 7th book in the Expanse series, and I'm reading a nonfiction book for Nonfiction November. I'm reading Evicted by Matthew Desmond, which has been phenomenal. So that's what I've been reading. How is everyone? What have you been reading? I will try and get back to a regular schedule with the 1001 countdown videos. Might not be tough at the first of the year because I've kind of resigned myself to not making my goal of this year. I would love to get below 800. I'm so close to that number that feels maybe attainable by the end of the year. That would be great if I could do that and just keep plugging away. So I think that's all of my updates for now. I hope everyone is well. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks. Bye.